So, good evening to everyone. This is our last Zoom for 625. We are at the end. And basically tonight, I just want to do a couple things. We won't be on real long. As you can see on the agenda, I'm just wondering if any of you have any closing thoughts on our discussion from the last Zoom about looking at the intersection of Gallows, the readings in Gallows with Theory U. Then I want to spend just a little bit of time on the cross course teaming, particularly what your thoughts are about it, what I need to know, because it's going to be very important, this approach, to when we come into 801. And then what I'm going to do is do a short introduction into 801, show you what the books are, so you are able to, if you want, go out and get them now. And I'll explain how we're going to be using the books. So that is our agenda. So let me just start off by asking that question, if there is any follow-up around our last discussion around Gallows and your final readings within your teams. Anything that you would like to bring up for the good of the group? We have 7 people on tonight. Hi, Brian. So for those of you who just came on, what I've asked everybody, just if there's any follow-up from your thinking from our last Zoom around utilizing Gallows and its intersects with Theory U. So I just wanted to know if there were any, closing thoughts or any comments or any issues that you wanted to bring up in terms of what you were reading in Gallows as it relates to the U. So in the tradition of the Theory U and pausing for silence, I'm going to make the assumption that there really is not any other thoughts related to our discussion the last time. And that's okay. I just wanted to, see what thinking was around that. And as we go along, if something pops into your mind, just, feel free to bring it up. So let me move into the second part, and this is important, and I do want feedback from you around this. And so the general question is, how did the you, I have you on my mind, how did your experience, in experiencing the cross course teaming, how was that? And what I'd like to know is what worked and what do I need to be aware of for teaming in 801. And the reason I'm bringing that up is that 801, that you guys are going to be collaborating over the entire 10 weeks with your colleagues in the blended environment. And you'll see how that will happen when we talk about that. So I just want you to give me some feedback on okay, what was it like? What were you learning? What did you guys do? And what do I need to know about your experience with the teaming going forward into 801?
Well, I'll get us rolling.
Okay, Mike.
First of all, I enjoyed the process. It was, the ultimate multitasking Olympic event. But what I will say is that I think that, in the context of what we had been immersed in terms of Theory U, there wasn't an opportunity to really get to know one another before we plunged in. And so everyone's sort of a type A and focused on the task. So we interacted a lot. Very quickly, we established a structure and direction, and in our case, Michelle, and Brian and I took assignments and responsibilities for things that we were going to contribute, but I don't think we had a chance to really understand who each of us was before plunging in.
Okay, good. Okay, now that's good to know. And the other thing I want to tell all of you is that I'm meeting tomorrow night in Philly with the blended group. So we're going to do the same thing there. And I will share some of your comments with them because, my own response to that is it's kind of interesting. And it's something I need to be aware of, that I probably should have said something to you about, well, maybe you want to utilize the U and what you learned there to get to know each other. But trust me, you'll have a lot of time over the next 10 weeks to do that. So, but I think that's a good, excellent point. So other perceptions, comments, what happened?
Well, this is Brian.
Brian?
I think our team did work really well together, and I like the comments Mike made. We have so many people coming from so many different backgrounds. The interesting thing is, for me, for someone who's technically challenged in many regards and learning a lot of new technologies, having some of the team members on board who really know how to use and synthesize some of the information is great. And it's part of, all these individuals contribute something different to create, a final product that goes through a whole lot of machinations. I think the whole process is a learning experience that's positive.
Okay. Others, and I know you're there because I'm scrolling through. Give me some more feedback. It's important.
Hi, this is.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
This is Cindy, and I was on Team 5. We really had a great time working with each other and laughed part of the time because we had so many technical issues with Google Hangout before we converted over to Zoom. So we really enjoyed the process and getting to know each other. We wish we would have started a little earlier so we could have made those connections sooner, but at the end, we were really happy with what we were able to do.
Okay, all right.
Thanks, Cindy. This is Ryan. Definitely just maybe having a contact list of who we were in our group with, maybe even a week before we started working, just so we could have set up some kind of informal meeting just to get to know one another would have been nice. And then going back to what Brian said about being kind of technologically impaired, and I know there's nothing you can do about this, but I feel like the space within our Drexel email is very kind of limited. So it became a project we definitely utilize Google Docs and other technologies for, but also at times became a little cumbersome, I think, just because, I tried to send it to your Drexel email, but the Drexel email was full, so it didn't go through. So now I send it through Google Docs to, double check that you got it, that kind of thing. And again, I know there's probably nothing you can do about that, but it just got to be a little cumbersome at some points with making sure my groups have got some of my documentation.
Okay, good. That's a good point. Yeah, the other thing is, and it's something, that I think is very important. You must check your email, your Drexel email, at least I would say once a week, because when it starts filling up, and particularly with my voice announcements every Sunday morning, that eats up a lot of your space. And what will happen is, if you don't delete those, well, first listen to them. But if you don't delete them, that will eat up that space. And once you reach 100% capacity, that's it. You don't get any emails. So that's one thing that I think is extremely important. And I myself am guilty of that also, because it fills up rather quickly. And and I think your points about as you say, technologically challenged. I think I'm hoping within the teams that there's enough people there that will help and to, navigate through that process, because that's one of the things you're going to find out next quarter, is that you're going to be functioning within that team for 10 weeks. So there will be, a lot of time, a lot of pacing, and to one extent, throwing you into this environment right now, I just wanted to mainly see how you're reacting into it, and what you need to understand as you move into 801. So that's good. But I also think you're right about getting out the for future classes in this, that I will probably a week earlier get the information out so you don't get shell shocked right away. So good points there.
And I will say that it was incredibly beneficial to expand the network, my personal network, meeting and working with people with different skill sets and capabilities and perspectives. I think that was probably, just below what you wanted us to accomplish, Dr. Gould.
Yeah. Well, and as I said, this is a learning experience for all of us, as we begin to look at this, and just think about what that MOOC was about, for 6 weeks, 28,000 people interacting generally, or having at least the opportunity to interact, and how you yourselves personally interacted with it, I think is something, we're exploring with going forward, whether it be with our Drexel courses or these other types of courses. This technology is going to really drive the learning scene. So I think the more we're aware of it, the more we play around with it, and more, that I as a professor utilize it and you give me feedback on it, the better it's going to be as we move forward. So others, perceptions, comments, are what some of your colleagues have said kind of mirror what you're thinking right now?
Hey guys, it's Jack. I just wanted to comment on it. It was interesting and fun to do. It was one of the larger group projects that I had, and so I enjoyed working with it. It was fun to see the dynamics of people come together. There were some people who wanted the project done 2 weeks before, and then there were some people who were, hey, he said the 15th, so leave me alone until then. So it's fun trying to get all those people together and say, okay, let's find a common ground so some people aren't, pulling their hair out. But that's what you do. That's part of, leadership. So I enjoyed doing it. I really enjoyed the interactions between everybody.
Okay, good. Thank you. And the key question, so let me throw this out right now to you then. The key question is, are you okay staying within that team that I put you in? So let me really put you on the spot.
I would really like it if we stay with our teams.
This is Robin, and I would ditto that. I was on the team with Cindy, and we had such a good time with our team, and actually look forward to working together again in the future, whether or not we're on the same team or just collaborating with each other from time to time, we were able to really establish a nice little rapport. So I would appreciate if we stayed in the same team.
All right.
This is Ryan. I was in the same group as, well, if we're talking about the discussion group, I was in the same group as Cindy, Robin, Jack, Latasha. I love that group. That was amazing. The other group, again, was still amazing to work with. Either group, I would love to work with again.
Okay. All right. And I'm mainly talking about doing the cross-course teams in 801. So I want to make sure that you're comfortable within this present structure of the cross-course team. And so as you think about it, if you do, say, maybe I might go on another team or whatever, you can let me know offline. But generally, I would like you possibly to stay in these teams because we started with them. And if there isn't some real compelling reason why you don't want to stay in them, then I'm going to recommend that you do. And, I loved your statement about pulling your hair out, Jack. So obviously I've worked in a lot of teams. I don't have anything up top. So if all of you are okay with that, and I will talk, obviously tomorrow night and share with them, we will stay that way. And that's going to become your functional team for 801. In a couple minutes, I'll show you what you're going to be doing over that 10 weeks. So that might help to get you to look at this a little differently also.
Yeah, just not to be silent on it. I too would very much like to stay with the team that we had.
Okay.
If you're in Philadelphia, so if you want to make some changes, it's going to cost you a couple of number one draft choices in cash.
Yeah, right. But we get rid of all our star players, remember that. Oh, brother, I was waiting for somebody to bring that up. So anyway, but then you can be a Philly fan, so whatever.
Oh, no.
So what I'm going to surmise and make the assumption about is that, okay, this was an interesting experience. I did get something out of it and blah, blah, blah. And, maybe if we worked a little bit longer, it would have been better. But I'm okay to stay within the structure of the team that I'm in now as we move into 801. So I'm going to make that assumption. But what I'm also going to tell you that if offline or something, you say, yeah, I was thinking about this, but maybe I want to do something a little bit differently. Or you have some thoughts about thinking about this, the design and some things I need to know about what I need to do. Don't feel, that you can't let me know this through an email because, as I said to you, I'm in a learning mode with this also. And the more feedback I get from you guys, because you're the ones that are actually doing the work, the better I can seem to, create the learning space for you. So that's what I'm going to really ask you, to do going forward. Okay. So what I'm going to do is let me take you into 801 so you have an idea, and I'll show you what the books are so you can go ahead and get them. Generally, I'm going to suggest if you want to get them right away, go on Amazon, get them there. They're there. You only have one book that I think is might be about $50. All the rest of them are trade books. So we'll be looking at this. But what this experience is going to be, this is going to be the culminating course, actually, where you're going to still focus on leadership. Because after 801, and as you begin to move into your other courses related to research, the courses related to any of the specialties that you're looking at, the general focus on leadership will slowly dissipate as a active function within the courses. Now, we're looking at trying to change that over time, but I just want you to be aware of this. So what you're going to be doing in 801 is actually drawing upon 800, 625, 802, and I also can add in 804 because that was dealing with the assessment of organizations from evaluations, etc. So the focus will be on what I'm calling the creative strategies then for educational leaders or for leaders in general. So if you're working in a business environment, this is very apropos. Also, it's not just for for schooling, because in business, if you think about education, you're really talking about staff development and training sides within that environment. So the conceptual framework, here we go again, there it is. It starts out 800. So why I'm bringing this up, so you can in your own minds begin to think about this organization, because what you're going to be faced with is an event that you're going to be dealing with in terms of designing new structures, basically, for learning in the future that goes from the gamut from K or pre-K to death, basically. So the event is going to be around that level. And so you're going to draw upon, a lot of information looking for patterns and trends going forward. So you'll be exposed to a lot of information, coming out of future work done in the Wall Street Journal, a lot of work done by a major thinker around sustainability, Jeremy Sachs, out of Columbia University, and other stuff that you're going to pick up, and some videos that you'll be exposed to. So you're going to look at patterns and trends, and then from that, what you will start playing around with is begin to look at the idea of systemic structures. What are our present structures, particularly from how we educate people? And when I'm saying educate people, I'm talking about from childhood to adulthood, and then what are those mental models that are at play? And so what you will do in a team is, as you look at those patterns and trends going forward and not from the past, you'll begin to talk about structural designs of new learning spaces and what are the assumptions that are going to be needed there. So you're going to pull from 801. And remember, you looked at Sengi's book on necessary revolution. You looked at his book related to the schools that learn, or the Fifth Discipline Field book. You pulled off Russell Lakoff's material. You looked at, obviously, Heifetz and Linsky dealing with this idea of patterns and the balcony and the dance floor. And so these things, I think, will come into play as you deal with this. So that's the idea where 800 is going to come into play. What happens then is, on top of that, we're going to place, obviously, the you. So your ability as a group to be able to see, so you're seeing, you're sensing, letting go of what we think education or schooling is about, to possibly let come and to create a performance around it, around those concepts, again, of an open mind, open heart, and open will. So we will begin to utilize these concepts that you're playing with in terms of generative leadership, generative listening, in order for your team to really let go of your present thinking about the structure of school, whether it's in K-12, higher education, or training within work environments. And then you're beginning to think about how that open mind, which is the intellect, how the open heart, which is the emotional side, and how that open will is this ability to blend those together to think about, new designs for where we're going in the future. What is going to be new to this is we're going to then lay this on top of it is design thinking. And what design thinking is coming out with this, defining what an issue is, then developing the empathy to understand it, beginning to ideate around it, to prototype, and then to test it. So if you remember, as where I have ideation and I have prototyping, that's going up the U. And what you're going to do is, to one extent, I'm going to get you into a rather playful mood so that you're able to begin to understand what it means to, develop prototypes, how to test them out, and how it helps your leadership development around this concept of, creativity and the interface of leadership with creativity. So that's the conceptual framework. And why I'm really stressing this is because, you know, to me in a doctoral program, or actually in any program we teach, it's important for you to see the relationship between what you're learning over a period of time, as opposed to just saying, okay, I'm done with 800, I don't have to worry about it anymore. You know, now I'm going to this course, I can drop this and I don't have to worry anymore. But know that when you tie this into the keystones of this program, those 5 keystones, this is going to be one that you're going to really work on practical applications, and as a group really dive into this idea of letting go to let come. So any questions about this framework right now? So none there. So here's the purpose. So the purpose would be is to journey into this concept of divergent and convergent thinking. And this is extremely important, because what I'm going to do is truly force many of you to think divergently, which is going to give you a headache, because most of us are products of organizations that are very linear in their operations, which primarily function on convergent thinking. And so, you know, from A to B to C to D to D to D to D. Well, what I'm going to do is, and I'm going to act this way, and it's going to take about, you know, you probably have some thinkings about me over the last 2 quarters. Well, this one's really going to take you into the stratosphere, because I want you to experience what divergence is and how the group then process a creative process from itself. And the more you're able to let yourself go, if you are particularly a type A person, to begin to open up your mind to allow open heart to emerge, you'll truly begin to understand what the creativity is all about in relationship to leadership. So that's the first purpose. The second purpose is really to explore your deeper assumptions now about creativity and its relationship to leadership, and we're going to do it through what is called creative problem solving. And that's going to be one of your books. That's going to be the book that is more akin to the Theory U book, and I will set up readings every week from that book, chapters that will relate to many things you're doing. So, and this is going to come out of the work of Gerald Puccio and his team, who is one of the leading thinkers about creativity and leadership. So that is the second purpose. And then the third purpose of the course will be really for you to develop, you know, the necessary skill sets using Design Studio, which comes out of IDEO. So those of you who have watched the videos in the MOOC related to prototyping, we're going to be utilizing a lot of those ideas. And that design thinking that I laid upon the framework basically is the skill set that you're going to be exploring. So these are the 3 purposes of what this is about. Okay? Any comments, questions just about what you're seeing? You'll have plenty of time down the road to ask about these, but any thoughts right now, or pretty clear, or at least you see the flow here?
It's great that the courses are all building on each other. You know, you really appreciate that. You feel like you're, you know, getting a value out of each course. So I thank you for that.
Okay, good.
So there's real benefit in having a framework to stitch together all of the different kinds of things you get exposed to. So whether it's IDEO and whatever they're doing, and the MIT Media Lab and whatever they're doing, and Stanford and whatever they're doing, and, you know, so it becomes episodic. So it's great to have a bit of a framework. to think about all of these different transformational approaches, and there are many.
Yeah.
In some type of framework.
Yeah, good, because that to me is that there is such a massive amount of information, ideas out there about this, and that it's totally impossible to know all this stuff. But if you can at least, look at the development of those three frameworks, I think at least it gives you a place to, as you discover who you are in relationship to this, a place, to sort of hang different ideas on. So that's why I keep doing that. And I honestly feel as a doctoral student, particularly in an EDD program, which is, basically doing the application within the field, different than a PhD that is strictly following the rules of research in terms of a closed environment. This then becomes important for you to understand. And particularly, I'm hoping that it will help you greatly in beginning to organize what you're thinking about in terms of a dissertation study. So this course particularly tries to bring all of this together for you. So now let me show you the core text. So the first one is Creative Leadership, second edition. This is a SAGE book, Gerald Puccio, and this is talking about what creative leadership is. It has a lot of information in there related to the research. It has a lot of practical application over time, and it's just not educational. It's all types of organizations. And the book is a fairly easy read. It's not a difficult book to read, but it will be the main focal point of our work. And when I do my little Sunday morning things, I'll relate a lot of it to the other books. So this is your anchor book. The second book is Tom Kelly's The 10 Faces of Innovation. Now, this one you can get in Amazon, and and it's an easy read, and it's one that I'm not assigning weekly reads. You're going to have like 3 weeks to go through it. And the reason I'm saying that is you might want to read the first 2 chapters, but what you're going to do is you're going to do an analysis of yourself, and then you're going to present that analysis to me of who you are in relationship to what innovation is and what he has learned. Now, who's Tom Kelly? Tom Kelly and his brother David Kelly are the founders of IDEO. And they're the ones that, and if you don't know what IDEO is, it is the premier design firm that did everything from developing this thing right here, a major design firm for many of the Apple products. But what's interesting about IDEO now is they are into what you might call social design, dealing with human beings, dealing with communities, and you'll see in a couple of minutes something I'll have available to you that you can download and use in schools. So this particular book is designed to help you sort out the type you are and the type that you're not, because within your teams, I want you then to do an analysis of your entire team based upon the types that are in there, in terms of innovation. Now, again, I always caution people, if you've ever taken Myers-Briggs or any of those surveys on personality types, remember the validity of those are you. That's it. That's all they're worth, because it comes from your perception, but the authors, create a framework for you to look at it. So this is a very interesting one coming out of his many, many years of working with innovative process and what they've learned about what truly innovation is. So these are 2 of the books. Okay, so you see that creative leadership, and I'll send these out so you have the author and titles and everything, but I just want to make sure that you know what they are. So the next set of books, so you have 4 altogether. So this one now is by Tim Brown. This is Change by Design. This is the book, and again, it's a fairly easy read, but it will give you a very good understanding of what design thinking is. And I will tell you, design thinking is the buzzword right now. Everybody and their brother's doing design thinking. And what's more important about this, remember when you read about Fullen, where Fullen said, concept or, ideas and language travels well, but the underlying concepts don't. So most people don't understand it. This book, now Tim Brown right now is the president of IDEO. David Kelley is the founder of the D School at Stanford. So if any of you know what the D School is, it's a highly interdisciplinary group of people. I think we did have a video, I think in one of your courses, I don't remember which one, of IDEO, and you'll see a couple more of how they function so you see what you're reading in Tim Brown's book. And this is where you're going to get into understanding the difference between divergent and convergent thinking. You will get that in Puccio book, but the important thing is you need to understand to be a highly creative person or leader, or how to nurture that, you need to understand and to practice both divergent and convergent thinking. And then the last book is Dan Pink's book, Drive. And this is a rather interesting book because it deals with his research and his discoveries about the issue of motivation. And no matter what you do in creativity and innovation, motivation is an extremely important component. And what is very surprising about most of this, if you look at my little statement there, is that in environments where extrinsic rewards are most salient, people will, just work to the point that triggers the reward and no further. And that has a lot of interesting implications for how we do school, particularly, as we use external measurements for rewards for learning, as opposed to utilizing this idea of open mind, open heart, and open will. I think I sent out to you guys, I don't remember if I did or I tweeted it, about many school districts now are beginning to implement mindfulness practice within their classrooms. And they're getting some interesting results in terms of behavioral issues where the negative behavioral issues seem to be dissipating quite a bit. So Dan Pink's book will help to give you, again, a sense of what motivation plays into in relationship to this. So that's your 4 books. 3 of them, all of them are fairly easy reads. And I will tell you, the only one that I really focus on weekly is the Puccio book. The other 3 books, I want you to read over the 10 weeks. But I will periodically make certain statements of where you should be looking at in the book as it relates to activities as we go on. All right? So anything about books? Have any of you read any of these books, particularly Dan Pink?
I have not.
Okay. So now, here's some resources I want you to think about. I imagine Lair book, How Creativity Works, but particularly a very good one to read is Ken Robinson's Out of Our Minds. Very interesting book, since he is sort of the Pied Piper of creativity in schools, particularly learning to be creative. I'm sure we have seen many of his videos about schools, etc. So that I would recommend. And then the next one is Robert Fritz's book. And you should remember Robert Fritz from Peter Senge's book, because Robert Fritz is the one, remember the idea of creative tension with the rubber band in the book? Well, that's Robert Fritz's concept. So the path of least resistance for managers deals a lot with how to simulate, or not to simulate, how to stimulate creativity within organizations, and utilizing what Senge talked about in terms of that idea of creative tension. So these are pretty good resources. And then finally, and you will be able to download this from the course, this is the Design Thinking for Educators. It's about 98 pages long. It's free. This comes from IDEO, and it's specific to teaching environments in terms of how to recreate our classrooms, our educational system, and you will be able to utilize this a lot when we go through the 10 weeks. So that will be available for you. If you go out to the IDEO website now, you can actually download a lot of these things. They are opening this up and giving it to people both in education and in organizations. So you will have this. So that's sort of a field book that you'll be able to use. And then finally, the design team. So what's going to happen then for next 10 weeks, then you're going to be working collaboratively within those teams. And the question that you're going to be focused on as the challenge that I'm putting out there for your team is, how do we structure new learning environments that allow for the integration of learning activities based on concepts found in sustainability? So, and I'm defining sustainability as those things that you were exposed to in Sengi, those things that you were exposed to, particularly with Otto, talking about the 3 divides, self with nature, self with others, and self with self. So that's going to be the fundamental driving question for your area. And then the purpose then of this design team then, as you read this through, will be to, do a collaborative team, really put some of the theory use stuff, I'll put it that way, into action, and to experience really what design thinking is about. And so what you're going to do is in the 5th week, you're going to do prototyping, and you're going to create a very large vision of what this is, but your final product is only going to be a part of that vision that could be put into practice now. Because if you remember from the MOOC, that one of the things they talked about in terms of prototyping, that it is extremely important to understand that you can't prototype like eradicate poverty. But what you can do is create small programs that might lead to the eradication of poverty. So the first 5 weeks, you're going to be looking at very broad concepts. The last 5 weeks, you're going to be really working on designing an implementation of a part of your grander scheme. And we'll, and I'll take you through that quite a bit as we're going through. So the way you look at this then is, for the first 3 weeks, and this will all be in your syllabus, and I will get the syllabus out to you in about a week. I have to obviously make changes of dates and everything into it. But you're going to be doing, the first 3 weeks, a lot of environmental scanning. So you're going to be looking at Sachs material. You're going to be looking at some videos. Your team's going to begin to explore what people are saying about the future. So we'll be looking at those things. Then we're going to start moving up the U, where you're going to be analyzing the data. What are we learning from the field? Because what I want you to do, for some of you, I want you to go out and interview kids. I want you to go out and interview adults. And if your team wants to bring some kids into the process, go for it. Or outside people, it's okay. So the 4th week, you'll be doing that. The 5th and 6th week, you're going to be prototyping. The 7th and 8th week, then you will be starting to put structure to, I'm going to call school learning environments. And then the 9th and 10th week, then you're going to tell your stories. And we have a website that you're going to be able to post all this stuff. So this is a framework for what you're going to be doing over that 10 weeks. And I wanted to just make sure that, as you just start thinking about this very brief introduction, that there is a madness, a method to my madness in linking 800, 625, your technology courses and that course into a culminating experience. It's going to allow you to really play around with this stuff. So that's what I wanted to give you tonight. So I guess the dumb question I ask is, any questions? or we'll just let this obviously percolate and, sink in, and I will, as I said to you, be able to give you, the syllabus probably in about a week and a half I'll send out to everybody. So any general comments about this, anything, you see here, or any questions swirling around in your minds right now?
Well, the question I have really, not necessarily about what you're presenting, but it relates to all of the work that we have to do, is that it doesn't seem to me that school districts are spending a lot of time on the issue of sustainability other than funding and looking for new sources of revenue.
Yeah. Yep.
Not that that's not the case. I know from others, like Michelle, who was on one of my teams, she's deeply involved in the day-to-day activities of the changes and transformations that are taking place in the classroom, a lot of it related to technology.
Yep. Well, that's going to be an issue you're going to have to confront. So the question, and the question is, and if you think about it from what you read, particularly in Otto's book, when he talked about transformation of economics, going from, remember, he looked at 1.0 all the way to a 4.0 society. And when you begin to think about, even in the state of Pennsylvania right now, with a new governor in that proposal, and when you begin to think about underlying assumptions of the common good versus the individual good, and if you think about it from eco to eco systems, that's going to be something you'll struggle with. And I think, Brian, you're totally correct. And I think about that picture of you, even though you just see the top of your head with that check. Think about that. Those ideas. So yeah, that's going to be something you're going to have to deal with around the development of this. But the one thing I'm going to try to get you guys to do is not to download the present structure of how we do schooling, and that includes the financial aspect of it. So I'm going to really get you to, try to put this stuff into a way that, and I'm going to put it this way, instead of focusing in on reforming our schools, I want you to think about how we redesign our learning and then what type of structures come out of that. So that's going to be the challenge for all of you. And that issue, every single time, the number one issue that comes up, how are we going to pay for it? But I don't want you to get stuck there, because then what happens is, from the theory U point of view, then you get stuck in old habits of thinking and behavior. We got to go past that, and then you work backwards. So those of you who understand understanding by design, you're always working backwards from the vision or from the outcome that you're seeking. Okay? So that is it. If there's no other questions right now, I'll be talking about, to the other team tomorrow night. I'll be looking at your projects. I believe there's two more of you I have to give you comments on your interviews from this particular class, and I think everyone is done. I have them. I just haven't looked at them. I'll probably get them done tomorrow. But otherwise, I think everything's in. I see all your 1-2 pages are there, and your projects are there. So I'm hoping to get all the grading and feedback to you done by Sunday or by Monday, so you can enjoy some respite, at least from this madness, as you move into the other stuff.
Dr. Gould, this is Andrea. I still owe you the personal reflection 1-2 pager.
Okay, just get it in. Get it up there. I know there was a couple missing, but that's okay.
I should be able to have it in there by tomorrow night at the latest.
Yeah, that's fine. You basically have the Sunday, so it doesn't matter. Okay? So if there is nothing else, I am going to stop the recording, And I will be the last person on